Hello everyone, so in this tutorial I will basically show you how to create this texture here in Blender. Basically I will basically show you how to recreate this scene here in Blender. As you can see, this is basically the Duraflex finish of bicycle. It's basically like very plasticky finish that gets a lot of dust, a lot of like smudges, and a lot of scratches. You can see it looks really good. It looks so freaking beautiful, and you can see that this is 100% a render. So I will basically show you how to create all this from scratch, and I will also include the UV in case you have my model pack. If you don't,
Boring.
also if you already bought my model and textures pack
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
that is available on Gumroad, this will be completely for free. If you have it, it's like a free update that I'm giving to you, so you basically don't have to do anything. You only will have to add your own design here, and that's it. You will have this looking like this with your own design. So yeah, so let me just move this right here so we can get started. So the very first thing you will need to do is you will need to add a camera and a background here, right? So I'm just going to copy like the camera they already have, but you need to have like a camera and a model to work on. If you don't have like a playing card model, but you would like to use this texture in stuff like cars, I don't know, like guns or like a toy or something like that, you can basically use it on anything that is has like a similar texture to this playing card. But of course, this is like a playing card focused texture. So I will be working based on this. Let me just delete the texture because it already has the texture made. So we will be selecting the model that we will be working on. Also, one more thing before I continue. In order to see the texture properly, you will need to have a HDRI, right? So I have this add-on called Easy HDRI that basically allows me to easily use HDRIs. So I'm just going to use something like, I don't know, this photo studio, so I have like a lot of lights and reflections and stuff like that to work with. Okay, so now you are going to select the model. You're going to go to shading. Let me just resize all this so it doesn't mess with my workflow. So I want to actually see that. Let's just press on the camera so I can see what I'm doing. Let me move it a little bit down like this. Okay, so we select the model and we press on new, right? We can press here or we can press here, right? Any of the two work perfectly. They work perfectly, right? So you shouldn't really have any issues with any of this because they work really well. Okay, so now we click new, and this will create us this principal BSDF, right? So let's just go into render. I personally like to work in render mode. Some people like to work in material preview. Some people like to work in this in solid mode. It all depends on your machine and basically on what you like and what you don't like. I like to work on render mode. It uses more of like my graphics card, but I like how it looks. So now let me just click off that, and the very first thing we will be doing is basically changing the IOR, right? The IOR. This. Why? Because plastic has a different IOR than like glass or like a light. Basically, it's completely different. This is basically like reflection and like how it acts in front of light. And because this texture is all based on light, we need to actually have the correct IOR, right? So let's place 1.46. That's the correct way to have it. Now here's two ways you can do this. Actually, like I've found out by playing with this that the roughness for plastic is basically of like this Duraflex plastic is basically 350 0350, but it doesn't really matter that we move anything here right now because we will be adding like surface imperfection and stuff like that. So we will be using the roughness a lot. So I will just change it to black so you can see how the light reflects and stuff like that. So let's start with adding fingerprints. Okay, so the first thing we'll need to do is press Shift A, and it opens this panel, and we search texture, right, or image texture. That's right here. We press enter, and we have it right here, right? Now we will be adding this to our roughness like that. You can see it's completely different now, and we will be needing to add a color ramp like this. There we go. So now we have two really basic things that we need to have. Right now, let's go into here, and we will be needing to open um, our fingerprints. It's right here, right? Fingerprint. Shout out Patrick Kuhn. This download is such fire. But yeah, anyways, we need to add like our fingerprint texture like this. So this is basically how it looks. But if you see, it looks way too big for like a playing card because I have a deck of cards. Unless I'm only using like my pinky or my ring finger for this, it's impossible that it's that small, right? Because this is how a card looks. Basically, if you use a thumb, it doesn't really look like that. It needs to be bigger, right? So that's basically what we need to do. We need to make this bigger. How we do that, we select the texture and we press Ctrl T, right? And it creates this mapping node, right? So we just need to change the scale. The scale we press 0.5 on everything, 0.5, and on the last one 0.5. There we go. So now it's more accurate to you like thumbs, because if you see in play cards, we mostly use our thumbs instead of like fingers, right? Fingers we use it for the sides, even for isolations we use your thumbs. So this looks a little bit more realistic as something that you just basically press your thumb and smudge it down, right? But this looks way too like greasy. Right now it looks like if you have took like chicken, fried chicken, or like fries or something really greasy and you touch cards, right? No one fucking does that unless you're filthy. If you do that, I'm sorry, but you need to wash your hands before using your cards. We basically need to slide this down to around here. You can see that it starts to look a little bit more faded, Now to make the effect a little lower, we can change this. As you see, if I turn it black, it completely disappears. So we need to make it a little bit gray, like that. That looks good for me. Now right now it looks way too dark, but because we will be stacking textures on top of other textures, it won't really look like this in the final product, as you saw, right? So right now, just to make our life easier, just take this, press Shift D to duplicate this, so we have it here, right? Now we will need to open our scratches or scratch texture right here. I have 3 different scratch textures. I will be using this. Let's use the 23 scratch texture 23, and we need to connect it, right? But if we do that, you see that the scratches disappear, right? But this is a way to add it, right? Now there's a different way to add scratches that actually have depth, right? If you only want like surface level scratches, you can do this, right? Now what I'm going to do here is add smudges, because usually smudges are actually surface level and scratches are more deep, right? So this is basically how this smudge looks, right? But let's make it just a little bit more visible around here. That looks good for me. Let's just make it a little bit darker like that. Now we just need to connect these two together. As you can see, if I connect this one here, the other one unplugs, right? For this we need to create a mix RGB. So we go mix RGB, we connect one there, and we connect the other one there. As you can see, as I told you, it will look way lower. And now you remember, do you remember that the plastic roughness is actually 350? So we just need to duplicate this, add it here, and will have this gray color, and we will add 350 there. You can see that it tones it down because it's adding this gray layer on top that is acting like all roughness, right? So you can see if I put it all this way, it will look great because it has all that gray layer, like it's like a primer, all this primer on top that is sucking all that light. Now if we move it here, you can see that now it has only the smudges and stuff like that. So if we add 350, it will look pretty good. You can see it. It doesn't look bad. It looks really good, right? So now let's just move all this. And now we will be adding our scratches, right? Now there's 2 ways to add scratches, right? Because if I add, let me just show you how it looks with an actual texture. So if we go to base color, right, and we open the texture, let's use the blue one that I used on the example right here. This is basically how it looks so far. You can see that there are no scratches there. So we will be adding scratches to this texture. And how we do that? We do it the same way we added all this. Let's just Shift D, move it there. Let's move this down, this up. Let's just manage all this. Now go here, go into mix RGB, we press 1. We want this one to be on top. Why? Because we want this image to be the one that is on front, right? Now just click this one into the bottom one, and you can see that now it has like a faded fingerprint, but that's because of this. If I delete it, you can see that now there's no faded fingerprints, right? But we will be adding scratches. As I told you, I was gonna show you a way to add like more accurate scratches. So we're going to the scratches texture. You can see them right here. Now, something I do, because I like making it wider. You don't have to do this, but I like to do it. Just add like something like less 6.7 on the Z axis, like that. It's like a really small change, but I like it. I like how it looks. Right now, we will need to change this gray to white. You can see that the scratches are more visible now. If I do it like this, they are more like tame, right? But I want them to be more visible. So let's just move this all the way there, and we will be moving this just to take out a bit of those scratches, right? Because I don't want this to look really scratch, right? The more you move this, the more scratches it will have. The less you move it, the less scratches it will have, right? So let's just go here and let's play a little bit with this. You see, if I make it black, it will look less. If I make it white, it will actually be more visible, right? Basically just like that. Okay, so now I will show you how to make this have depth, because right now it's just way too surface level instead of having more depth, right? So we will be adding depth to this. How we do that? We need to duplicate this and place it down, and now we will need to add a bump map. We just shift A, bump, connect the bump into the normal map, and connect color into the normal one, right? We need to connect color into the normal, right? We leave the scratches as they are, like that. Let's just change this to 0.5, right? And now we basically need to make this a little bit more visible. That works. And so far we got this, right? So as you can see, this is really easy to do. This is basically the entire setup that you need in order to turn this into this, right? So how it looks without all of this, it should be looking something like this, right? So you can see the actual difference on everything. We added image texture, we added into base. Now we just select this. You can see this is how it looks without anything else added. And you just click here. This is how it looks without anything added, and this is basically how our material looks. You can see that it looks way different. It looks way more real than this. This looks just way too soft. It looks like nothing, not even plastic, right? But our material looks more darker in certain areas, more light in certain areas, and it has scratches. Those scratches, as you can see, they have depth. The scratches have depth, and everything. Right now, if we want to make those scratches more visible, because I don't know, you just like it to having more scratches, just move it here, and that should be adding more scratches. Move the blacks down. Like if I add it like that, you can see that it has this huge scratch on top. As I lower it, it makes it more tame, right? So that's basically the function for this, right? So that's basically the function for that one. Now, if you want to change the design, you have to use this image texture, right? So we click open, and we can change it to the red one per se. You can see this is how it looks in red, right? Right, it looks way different in red than it does in blue. Now for this one, if I were to post this one, I will actually change it, just make the scratches more visible, because red is a little difficult to work with, in my opinion. But yeah, this is basically what you can do. And yeah, I will show you how to properly render this. Well, honestly, it's basically my way to render this. We have it here. Right now, let's just go into solid, because we will be going into layout. Now from here, you just need to add a plane. You can see there's a plane. You add a plane with shift A and press mesh, then plane. Right now scale it down, and let's add it that way. I always like to work with actual, like, real life sizes. So this is the my models are the actual size of playing cards, right? So that's why it looks really small. The camera looks so big. Right now, let's just extrude, set axis, move it up, select this using the edit mode, and go into edge select, press Control B so you can add a bevel, right? So make it quite big, honestly, like this. And now just move your scroll up, so it creates more geometry, right? Now let's just click it, press tab, and right click, shade smooth. So far it looks like this, right? Looks pretty good. We can make it look better. How? By adding simple color. Let's just add a blue. Let's make it darker, right? So just by doing that, you can add a lot more interest to this, right? But now it looks a little bit off, so we need to rotate it so it catches the light the same as the card, right? So if the camera is like this, just pan it that way, move it that way, rotate it that way, so everything looks better, like this, right? Also, how close or how far is from the object itself, it actually matters, because if I put it really far away, you can see that there's like a line. If I put it really close, you can see that you can start to see shadows. So it actually matters how far or how close you place everything. So I like how it looks around here. Also, you can make it just larger. So I like how it looks there, right? So now let's just select the camera, and I will quickly show you my settings. I use depth of field. If I turn it off, everything looks sharp, but honestly, that makes it look like fake in a way. So I use depth of field. I select the model as my subject. I use f-stops of 14 because if you use standard 11, you have more blur on the edges. If you use 14, it's a little bit blurry, but it's also a bit sharp, right? I use a focal length of 90 millimeters, and this is basically like my camera sensor configuration. It's basically 36 millimeters for 24. Now, for this, I honestly mostly use 128 samples because that's pretty good for Instagram, and a lot of stuff. But if you don't feel comfortable with that low quality, you can always go with 256 or something like that. I use the denoiser included in Blender. Now just click in advanced and you can see there are a bit more options. Now something else you will need to like tweak is basically film. I usually go with 1.55. If I go into 0, you can see that how it looks. If I go into 1, it looks more darker. If I use 1.55, it makes it more bright, right? Now I go into performance and my tiling is usually 256, like that. Because I have a graphic card, is like easier for me to render this way. I use Filmic, I use sRGB, and I use a medium contrast. You can use medium high or you can use high contrast, right? Or very high contrast. So about your taste, right? But I find medium high to look quite good, honestly. You can play with exposure here, etc. etc. Now into my outputs, I usually use TIFF. Why? Because it's like the most information and raw way you can have it. I use RGBA and I use 16 bits of color depth. You basically use 2000 by 2500. Now let's just, oh yeah, one more thing in composition. Let me just delete this because I'm already using the other denoiser. So from here, I basically use a glare. So for glare, you can just go here, Shift A, press glare. You will basically just go into here, fog below, and add the glare, right? So for lens distortion, I use projector. I use distortion of 1 and dispersion of 0.1. And this will make your images look better and more real. You will see what I mean right now. So if I go to render image, you can see that it's rendering. Now we zoom in, we can see that the smudges are a bit more nasty per se, but you can change this by adding noise in Lightroom. Now, why are we taking out noise and then adding noise? Because we don't want like 3D noise, right? We want the option to add noise and see how much noise we will be adding. You can make this look better by using more samples, but honestly, when someone is watching this on Instagram, it's usually like this size. Honestly, if you are watching it on your computer, it's usually this size, so it still looks quite good. Now, chromatic aberration is basically these like blue and yellow lines you see here. You can see it better on the edge. There is like a yellow line. So that's basically what it is. Now you can also see how it looks as a noisy image. This is how it looks with all that noise. You can see that this looks more diffuse, but also is way more grainy, right? So that's why I like to use this. Now you can see how sharp the edges are, but they are also blurred, right? It's quite sharp and blurred. Now if we go into slot 2 and we re-render this, but using an f-stop of 11, we go into render, you will see the difference between f-stop 11 and f-stop 14. This is f-stop 11 and this is f-stop 14. You can see that one is more sharp than the other, right? I personally like this one. Yeah, now to save it, you're just going to image, save as, choose none, choose RGBA 16-bit, let's just call it Blender plastic tooth, and we go there, and there you have it. You can use this image and basically process it on Lightroom, or however you like. So yeah, um, thank you so much for basically watching this tutorial. I hope you found something useful. Again, all the textures and everything will be linked down below. All these images and stuff that I use will be available for free. But the model, and like if you just want to buy this texture, you can get it on Gumroad. So yeah, thank you and peace.